Just tell us about yourself and your role at CHOC and kind of like what gravitated you towards this mental health department.
So I am Dr. Dani Milliken, and I am the Director of Mental Health here at CHOC Children's Hospital. And I have wanted to be a psychiatric nurse since I was 6 years old. I never wanted to be a teacher, an astronaut, or a designer, or anything. I always wanted to be a nurse, and I always wanted to help people with mental health issues. When I was younger, I had a family member who had a mental health crisis.
Hmm.
And I remember sitting next to him and, seeing just all the pain that my family was going through, and
Hmm.
just so hard to get services and get him the help that he needed. And so I had mentioned to my mom when I was 6, I want to grow up and help people like him. And that stayed with me. And so my whole entire life has been, centered around how do I take the next step to become a psychiatric nurse. So very quickly, I went to nursing school. Soon as I got out, my very first job was in a juvenile detention center. And as we all know, detention centers and jails are filled with people who are struggling with mental health issues. And, it really was a really great first entry to see, how the system works, how kids, disenfranchised kids get stuck in a system that's broken, and really kind of pushed me into really changing the way that care is provided. So my very next job after that was at an adult state-owned and operated mental health system, and it was me as a nurse with 26 adult psychotic patients, and in the evening. And so it was a really great glimpse into the adult mental health system of care. And I just absolutely loved that job. I loved those patients. It was really kind of like textbook mental health symptoms, and got really, really good education on how difficult it is for people who get lost in the system that doesn't really work for them, and sometimes actually works against them. And I realized, I really wanted to make an impact on, like, early in the system of care. Like, could we, change somebody's life if we could just intervene earlier in their life and give them more of an opportunity to kind of go on and, reach the goals of their treatment earlier on. And so I went over to a children's hospital in Columbus, Ohio, and we opened a brand new mental health unit there. And it was wonderful. We provided care to kids ages 3 to 17. I was there for many years, and California called, and I kind of laughed with my husband and said, well, let's go check out California. And when I came out and interviewed with CHOC, it was very apparent that CHOC was opening a pediatric mental health unit for the right reasons. A lot of people want to open up mental health units because the EDs are filled with patients waiting, or, they don't know what to do, or they just need somewhere to place these kids. And what I realized with CHOC was the community support was incredible. And the community is really the reason it all happened. They showed up and talked with our CEO and said, hey, I really think that Orange County is missing an opportunity here. And for such a huge, world-renowned children's hospitals like CHOC to not have access to inpatient mental health care is a problem. And our CEO was like, you're right. And so she really believed in it. And we decided, it's time to open an inpatient mental health unit. And so we did in April of 2018. And we're the only place in the county that will take kids under 12 years old. We see kids all the way from 3 all the way up to 17. We have kids, at varying diagnoses and needs and treatment needs. And, you know, we see kids who are ADD, oppositional defiant disorder, intermittent explosive disorder. We see kids who are obviously very suicidal and depressed. We see kids who are self-injurious, psychotic, bipolar, really, you know, kids on the autism spectrum. We see kids of all walks of life. And it's really this very special place that where you bring all of those kids that need so many different types of care together and get to provide them, instead of just a place, we really provide them kind of like this healing environment and a place where they can feel safe and come and get the care that they need, which is sounds like something that is obvious and that should be available everywhere. But unfortunately, before we opened, there were so many kids that couldn't get that care anywhere else. And so we're really proud of that.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I got a little bit emotional too. Your story, actually, in the beginning. So that was a good one.
Easy to get emotional.
Yeah, no, it is. It does. And then especially when something that like, you know, like normally like society doesn't really talk about, you know, growing up and talking about mental health is a really like touchy subject. And it was like, it's always just kind of like, oh, what's wrong with that person? You know, the stigma of like just kind of like, oh, labeling somebody, just kind of like, hey, that person is a little bit weird, or like, you know, but then like you don't know deep down inside what they're going through. So growing up as a little kid, like I remember there's instances where I'm pretty sure a couple of like people that I've known like in classrooms, like they might have been not diagnosed, but then like there's something underneath all of that. It's just, but then like as a kid, you're just kind of like, oh, we got to stay away from him or her, is, you know? So yeah. I think whatever you guys are doing is definitely something that's going to help the communities, and then everybody moving forward is going to be a little bit more like, you know, kind of like aware of like things that are going around them. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, one of the really big things that makes us so different from other inpatient mental health units is that we really focus on providing what's called trauma-informed care. And essentially what that means is, instead of thinking about, like you were saying, you know, what's wrong with this kid, you start thinking about what's happened to this kid.
Yeah.
And when you start thinking about kids like that, you really start to realize, like, this isn't a bad kid. This is a kid that's lived a really hard life and is actually really resilient and amazing, and could go on to live such a productive and successful life if they're given the opportunity to heal from the traumas that they've experienced. And in order to do that, we have to have, you know, places for them to go and increase access to care. You could fill the Angel Stadium 3 times with kids in Orange County alone that are experiencing mental health issues.
That's crazy.
And we're the only 18 beds that takes kids under 12. And so when you start to do the math, if this was diabetes or some kind of medical issue, people would be outraged. Like, I can't take my kid to get, you know, medical care. That's unacceptable. But unfortunately, it's more acceptable to society that there isn't mental health treatment. And I think, you know, that's starting to change, and we're starting to see the community really come around and people feel more comfortable talking about it.
Yeah.
And then obviously with COVID, there's going to be no getting around it. We have to talk about it because our acuity and the number of kids showing up in our emergency department is skyrocketing, and they need help. And so we really need to be able to help them.
Yeah, I feel like education is like the first step.
Yeah.
And this is what this is all about. So
yeah. So there's so much stuff we can just talk about. We could talk about this all day, but then like I think it's just we're we are, and then it's just kind of I'm glad that we're getting into the mental health department at CHOC to talk about the issues and everything that's going on around, and trying to bring shine a light on it. I think the most important, of course, the most important thing is awareness. And then when people are more aware and people talk about it more, like people are more comfortable, like accepting the fact that, you know, my kid, there's something wrong with my kid, and not just kind of like, not wrong. I mean, like there's something going on with my kid that I can probably prevent and like probably like help him or her out at an early age, instead of just saying like, you know, my kid's that way, it's fine. Like, I'm not going to admit something is inherently wrong underneath. I think the parents are very, it's like a taboo subject to talk about. Even like growing up in an Asian community with mental health is something that we do not talk about. You know, it's very, very hard for kids growing up to just kind of, especially in
Express
Asian
their
community.
feelings.
Exactly. I think it plays a lot the kid and put a lot of pressure on kids to just kind of like keep everything inside. So I think this is, it's definitely something that we need to just kind of address and just kind of share, and hopefully social and everything hopefully we're able to do that for you guys. So yeah.
Yeah, it's really incredible.
Okay. Yeah, Nikki, let's, you can move on to the second question.
I mean, I think we can talk about something happy. Like, do you have any like memorable moments or anything that like sticks out to you?
Well, yes.
Yes.
So, I think there's so many things. I think that's the beautiful thing about mental health nursing and working with mental health patients, especially kids, is you really get to, see kids get better. And you get to be one of the people, even sometimes the only person in their life that's really hopeful for them and that tries to instill that hope into them. So for example, I got a card one time from one of my past patients, and it was years later. I think I had provided care to her when she was like maybe 12 or 13. And she sent me this card that had her graduation picture of like her in her cap and gown, and this really beautiful letter that was just like, I never wanted to see this day. Not only did I not think I was going to make it to this day, I never wanted to. And because of what you guys did on the unit, I really started wanting to. And today is just like the happiest day of my life, that I made it to my high school graduation and that I'm still alive, and that, I'm getting to experience life. And she's going to go on and be a nurse. And when you think about just our small impact, our small amount of time with her, maybe she was with us for a week or 2 weeks of her life, and the amount of impact that we were able to have and the hope that we instilled in her is really incredible. And then as she moves forward, then as a nurse, especially, all of the impact that she has on other people, we played a role in that. And so those to me are the most beautiful moments that really bring home the importance of what mental health nurses do. Unfortunately, society really looks negatively on psychiatric nurses. The only context that people have is Nurse Ratched from Netflix and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And people, constantly, anytime I say that I'm a psychiatric nurse, people are like, "Oh, did you watch Nurse Ratched?" It's like, no, no, I didn't, because that's not what we do. There's an entire profession of people that's whole entire lives are put towards, bettering the health and well-being of children, and they deserve just so much more heroic representation in life. And so that's one of the things that really excites me about your guys' project, is just being able to show people that, one, talking about mental health is okay, being a mental health patient is okay, but also being a mental health worker and being in this profession is also okay, because there's a lot of stigma that comes around it as well, mainly because of that lack of knowledge. So I think that's really cool. I obviously have, hundreds and thousands of stories, but I think really what it boils down to is the best part of being on a mental health unit, working with these kids, is really being able to be the person at the most vulnerable point in their lives, reaching out and telling them that they're worth being alive, that they are worth being here, and that they deserve all of the happiness in the world, and that we're going to help them get there, and that it's okay to not be okay. A lot of people feel so much shame and guilt. The amount of guilt that kids carry on their shoulders about being depressed is really incredible. And when you get to be the person to look at them and say, it's okay that you feel that way. You're not defected. You're not a bad person, that we can help you with this. It really just reminds you why you're doing what you're doing. And to see that hope then turn into hope within themselves, and set them on a path for a successful life is really cool.
Oh my gosh.
That's beautiful.
I was like tearing up.
It's spirit. Okay. Yeah, that was very, very beautifully put. Thanks, Danny, for that. Okay, so I guess, let me see. Okay, you can go on and talk about what the department means to you. I think you kind of probably touched on that. Oh, so what impact are you hoping to accomplish with CHOC in the next 5 years? So that's just kind of like, you know, something that, you know, maybe like your goals and what you're hoping that you guys can, you guys want to achieve within this in the next 5 years.
Yeah, so that's really easy. You know, we want to change the way that pediatric mental health care is provided across the nation. We're having a huge impact on our community, and that's really wonderful. But there is a lot of kids in this country that need quality mental health treatment and access to really quality programs. And when you think about 1 in 5 kids struggling with mental health issues and the lack of accessibility to healthcare, it's really staggering. And then when you couple that with, you know, sometimes kids are getting admitted to places that aren't of the highest quality, that have antiquated policies, that, you know, still treat people, you know, like we used to treat people back in the 50s and 60s when we didn't have the science behind mental health as researched and cemented. You know, and I think one really good example is seclusion and restraint. You know, a lot of people don't want to talk about seclusion and restraint because it's scary and it's something that's really traumatizing to the patients. And if you go into a hospital and you say, how often do you utilize these high risk interventions, you probably won't get an answer. Or you'll get a very vague answer. And I think for us, it's really important that we start being, as, you know, mental health providers, really start being transparent with things like that. Because not only do we need beds for these kids to go to, we really want high quality beds. We want places that are healing spaces for kids, not just, you know, they're coming here and we're managing their behavior or whatever the case is. For us, well, across the nation, you see up to 40% of kids on inpatient mental health units getting secluded or restrained. And that's staggering. And we should all be outraged by that. On our unit, we have less than 1% being secluded and restrained. And I think, you know, that still isn't good enough for us. Our goal is for it to be 0. And I think we will reach that goal. But I think it's really important that we show people that you can have a very safe environment and you can have a really safe unit, but you don't have to treat these kids like they're, you know, in jail. You can treat them like they're in a hospital here, you know, seeking treatment for their mental illness. And unfortunately, that's not really a widespread thought. You know, safety is paramount. Anywhere you go receiving mental health care, you'll hear safety is foundational. We do everything to keep everybody safe, and that's important. But we also need to be empathetic and dignified and respectful and really have core values at the bottom of what as the foundation of everything that we do. Things like compassion, building trust with kids, you know, respecting them. It's all really basic things that don't always happen in other, you know, mental health institutions. And it's not because people are bad people or that they're trying to hurt anybody. It's because, you know, we really put so much focus on safety that we forget that, you know, people can forget that these are kids and that they need to have fun and they need to be, you know, feel trusted. And they, you know, an adolescent's whole deal is independence. They want to be independent. And so we need to be able to provide some of that to them while they're with us. And I think that's what we do really good at CHOC is we really are trying to keep safety at the forefront, but also really coupling that with just as much importance on empathy, dignity, respect, compassion, trust, and just being a decent human. You know, it's everybody's like, oh, how do you guys do what you do? It must be because you get so much philanthropic support, and it's like, no, it costs nothing to be kind. It absolutely costs you $0. And so that's what we do here. And, I think that we've had some really good outcomes because of that. So our goal, is really to share that with the world and try to get people to realize, like, you can partner with kids. It doesn't have to be us versus them. And we can really have really beautiful outcomes for them when you just treat them well, treat them like you would want to be treated. So.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Wow. I mean, I'm like super impressed. I think it's oh, am I on mute?
No, I can hear you.
But yeah, thank you for sharing that. I guess this last question will be what we'll be using for like the shirt design. So I guess like what would be a word or phrase that you would describe like this whole, summary of everything?
Man, one word.
Or phrase.
It could be a phrase or a sentence, or it could be something that like you kind of like maybe like kind of like live by, or just kind of like one of those things where you just kind of like, okay, this phrase or word is basically sums up me, or like what you see like your career as, or even like something that you just kind of like that tells your story in a way. Yeah, so it can be anything. Yeah, it's something that just comes to mind.
Or you can throw several phrases if you'd like.
Okay.
No pressure.
No pressure. Yeah.
Well, it's hard, to come up with something just so succinct, because I've literally poured my life into this. But I think, for me, there's so many ways that you can talk about mental health, like I said, thinking about kids, like what happened to you versus what's wrong with you, I think is really important. But what it all, like 100%, what it all boils down to is just like being a kind human being. And I think for me, that is what I preach to everyone. When we go and do consults on medical units, and, we're trying to teach medical nurses how to, connect with mental health patients, everybody thinks it's this really, skillful, like, oh, you have to, have all this science and research. And really what it comes down to is, connecting with the human being that's in front of you as a human being, and just being kind to them. So I think kindness and empathy, that's really what it's all about. If you can be kind to somebody, they'll be kind back to you. There's no question about that.
Perfect.
That's great. That's perfect.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
There's a lot of phrases and words.
So much.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's good. That's good.
Succinct.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful actually. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Cool. Well,
we'll follow up with anything that,
cool.
With anything else we need to follow up on. But thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story. It was really amazing to hear. So
yeah, and thank you guys so much. I know that we've said this before, but like the impact that this could have on kids is huge, right? I mean, they don't go to, NAMI or Mental Health America website and learn about mental health. They're learning about it and hearing about it through places like you guys. And I think positive messaging around this really does impact and change lives. And it really honestly could save a kid's life. So from us, like, we're just so thankful that you guys are highlighting this and, taking the time to do it in a really high quality way, because these kids deserve to be seen and heard, and you guys are playing a part in that. So we really can't thank you enough.
Yeah, thank you so much for just sharing your story, and then basically explaining your thoughts on mental health, and then how we can better change it for the future. And then plus, I think a lot of our viewers and even like a lot of our customers are parents themselves. So I think this will have a major impact on them as well. And then it basically just kind of like educate them. You're a parent having kids, and then just being more aware of things like that, and not being so, very like, don't just start thinking outside the normal box, and not just always inside the regular box that everybody constantly just kind of like think like, hey, I don't think there's anything wrong, or I don't think my kids need any help. I think we can give them enough help, but then like there's only so much you can do as a parent. Like I think there's just kind of have to be like professional help that you can do for a kid at an early age, so then it doesn't, like you said, doesn't impact them for their later lives and everything. So I think, yeah, for sure, I think this is going to be something that's we're hoping that can just at least touch a few lives. We're not thinking about like thousands, but if it's just one person, I think that one person is just enough for us.
Yeah, and I think the other thing for you guys to know too is it's not even just parents, it's friends, it's coaches, it's teachers, it's aunts and uncles. I mean, all, like, a kid literally only needs one person in their life to believe in them, and that can save their life. So I think just, telling people, like, ask kids if they're okay. Don't be afraid to talk about it. Like, kids, I've never had a kid that was like, oh, my mom, like, I don't want her to talk to me about this. In the end, kids that are really sad and really sick, they want to talk about it, and nobody wants to talk about it with them. So this conversation is so important, and we're just really thankful for you guys. So
thank you so much.
So much.